Sometimes, the deepest wounds are carved by those who claim to love us the most. The words echoed in my mind as I stood before our empty house, my childhood home now stripped bare of everything but shadows and silence. 3 black garbage bags sat on the porch like unwanted guests, containing the fragments of my life they deemed disposable. I was 13 when I first learned about my father's betrayal. Now, at 22, I found myself facing an even greater deception. The house keys in my hand had become useless artifacts of a life that had vanished without warning. "Miss Allison?" Mr. Peterson, our elderly neighbor, called from across the street. His voice carried a weight that made my stomach turn. "I've been trying to reach you. There's something you need to know about your parents." The rest of his words faded into white noise as I noticed a fresh envelope protruding from one of the garbage bags. My name was written in my mother's elegant handwriting, but the paper beneath it bore an official letterhead I didn't recognize. My brother David's last text message flashed across my phone screen: "Don't open that letter, Allie. Sometimes ignorance really is bliss." But I had stopped believing in bliss the day I saw my father with that woman in his office. Now, standing before the empty shell of our family home, I realized that moment had been just the beginning of a web of lies that would take 9 years to fully unravel. My trembling fingers reached for the envelope as thunder rolled in the distance. The secrets it contained would either destroy what remained of our family or finally set me free. I never expected both to be true. The first raindrop hit the envelope as I opened it, smearing my mother's perfect handwriting. Inside, I found a single sheet of paper with a law firm's letterhead, dated 3 months ago. The words, "estate settlement" and "inheritance" jumped out at me, followed by a number that made my vision blur: $460,000. My grandmother's estate. The one they told me had been settled years ago, with barely enough to cover the funeral expenses. Another lie. Another betrayal. "Your father said you might come back." Mr. Peterson's voice was closer now. I hadn't noticed him crossing the street. "He left something else for you in my keeping. Said you'd understand when the time was right." I turned to face him, clutching the letter. "When did they leave?" 3 days ago. Middle of the night. "Your brother." He hesitated, glancing at the garbage bags. "He tried to stop them, you know. There was quite a scene." "David." "My little brother. The family rebel who somehow became their accomplice. Or had he?" The memory of that summer day 9 years ago flooded back, sharp and clear as broken glass. I was 13, staying late at Dad's office to finish my summer reading. The building was almost empty, the sunset painting long shadows across the carpet. I heard voices from his private office, his and a woman's, laughing. Not Mom's laugh. I shouldn't have looked. Should have packed my books and left. But curiosity has always been my curse. Through the gap in the door, I saw them. Dad and his secretary, far too close for any business meeting. His hand on her waist, her lipstick on his collar. I must have made a sound because suddenly they were staring at me. The secretary, Miss Andrews, quickly stepped away, straightening her skirt. But Dad just stood there, his face a mask I'd never seen before. "Allison," he said, his voice eerily calm. "This isn't what you think." But it was exactly what I thought. And worse. That night, I told Mom. I expected tears, anger, something. Instead, she smiled that perfect housewife smile and said, "Sweetheart, you must have misunderstood. Your father would never." David was listening from the stairs. He was only 10, but his eyes were old. "They always lie to us, don't they, Allie?" Mom sent him to his room, then turned to me with steel in her voice. "We don't discuss such things in this family. Ever. Do you understand?" I understood perfectly. The truth was something to be buried, like the dead flowers in our garden. 9 years of silence. 9 years of perfect family dinners and holiday photos, while the rot spread beneath the surface. My phone buzzed. Another text from David. "Did you open it?" "Damn it, Allie, I told you to wait. I'm coming over. Don't do anything until I get there." Too late, little brother. The truth was already spilling out, like blood from a wound too deep to heal. Mr. Peterson was still talking, something about my father's recent behavior, strange meetings, hushed phone calls. I barely heard him. My attention was caught by something else in the garbage bag, a photo album I'd never seen before. Inside, I found pictures of my grandmother's house in its last years. Not the modest home I remembered, but a luxury condo development. The dates on the photos, last year. The same time Dad lost his job. The same time Mom started working extra shifts to make ends meet. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. Thunder cracked overhead as I reached the last page. There, tucked into the back cover, was a second letter. This one in my father's handwriting. If you're reading this, you know too much already. Some truths are better left buried. For everyone's sake, let it go. You're better off without us. A car engine roared to life down the street. Through the rain, I saw David's old Honda speeding toward the house. His headlights caught something in the front window, movement inside what should have been an empty home. They were here. Watching. Waiting. The game of lies was about to enter its final round. David's car skidded to a stop in front of the house. He jumped out, soaked instantly by the rain. Don't go in there, Allie. But I was already moving, the second letter clutched in my hand. The front door opened with a familiar creak, they hadn't changed that lock. Inside, shadows danced across empty walls. Mom? Dad? My voice echoed through vacant rooms. I know you're here. A floorboard creaked upstairs. David grabbed my arm. They're not alone, he whispered. There's someone else. A figure appeared at the top of the stairs. Not our parents, but a man in a suit I'd never seen before. Miss Wilson? I'm afraid you're trespassing. Trespassing? This is my home. Not anymore. He descended slowly, each step deliberate. The property was legally transferred 3 days ago. I have the paperwork right here. David's grip on my arm tightened. Run, he breathed. But I stood my ground. Where are they? Your parents made their choice. The man reached the bottom step. They chose to protect you from certain complications. I suggest you respect their decision. Complications? I held up the inheritance letter. You mean like this? His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Fear? That document was obtained illegally. Like the way you obtained this house? David's voice was razor sharp. I recorded everything, you know. Every meeting, every threat. The man's mask cracked, just slightly. Upstairs, more movement. More shadows. Last chance, he said softly. Walk away now. Forget what you've seen. I looked at the empty walls, the years of lies, the shadows of a family that never really existed. Then I turned to David. Call them. He pulled out his phone, fingers flying over the keys. It's done. They're on their way. The man's composure shattered. He turned and ran up the stairs, shouting something I couldn't make out. Car doors slammed outside. Police. I asked David. Better. Remember Uncle Jack? The investigative reporter? For the first time that night, I smiled. The truth was about to have its moment in the light. And this time, no one could bury it. Uncle Jack arrived within the hour, his press credentials hanging around his neck like armor. The mysterious man in the suit was long gone, but he'd left something behind, a briefcase, abandoned in his haste to escape. Don't touch it, Uncle Jack warned, already pulling on latex gloves. If what David told me is true, this could be exactly what we need. The briefcase contained a stack of documents that made my blood run cold. Transfer deeds, power of attorney forms, bank statements, all with signatures that looked suspiciously like mine. They've been planning this for months, David said, his voice hollow. Ever since Grandma's lawyer contacted them about the estate. Uncle Jack examined each document under a portable UV light. These signatures, they're good forgeries, but they won't hold up under forensic examination. Your parents got sloppy. Why? The question burned in my throat. Why go to all this trouble? Because of what else Grandma left you, David said quietly. It's not just the money. Show her, Uncle Jack. From his messenger bag, Uncle Jack pulled out a thick manila envelope. Your brother brought this to me 3 weeks ago. It's why I've been investigating. Inside was a deed to a property I'd never seen, a luxury development built on what used to be Grandma's modest house. The estimated value, $2.8 million. Dad's company was involved in the development, David explained. He knew about the plans years ago. That's why he convinced Grandma to sign over her power of attorney before she died. They've been hiding this from you ever since. The pieces clicked into place: Dad's sudden job loss, the mysterious meetings, Mom's extra shifts that never seemed to reflect in our bank account. But they didn't count on one thing, Uncle Jack said, a grim smile playing on his lips. Your grandmother's final amendment to her will. Made just 2 days before she died. He handed me a single sheet of paper. My hands shook as I read. To my granddaughter Allison, I leave not only my estate but this warning: trust no one who values money above truth. They will sell their souls and yours too, if you let them. The sound of tires on wet pavement made us all freeze. Headlights swept across the empty living room walls. That's them, David whispered, peering through the blinds. And they're not alone. 2 cars had pulled up outside, our parents' sedan and a black SUV with tinted windows. 4 figures emerged into the rain. Get everything back in the briefcase, Uncle Jack ordered, already reaching for his phone. My contact at the DA's office is waiting for my signal. But before we could move, the front door burst open. Mom stood there, mascara running down her cheeks, Dad's hand gripping her shoulder. Allison, baby, thank God you're safe. She moved to embrace me, but I stepped back. Safe? I laughed, the sound harsh in the empty house. Is that what you call abandoning me? Forging my signature? Stealing my inheritance? You don't understand, Dad started, but David cut him off. Save it. We have everything. The forged documents, the development deals, the offshore accounts. Dad's face went rigid. The 2 men from the SUV stepped into the house, one in an expensive suit, the other built like a security guard. This is a family matter, the suit said smoothly. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. Nothing about this is private anymore, Uncle Jack replied, holding up his press badge. And I've just sent copies of everything to my editor. It runs in tomorrow's paper unless. Unless what? Mom's voice cracked. Unless you sign a confession, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. Both of you. Admitting everything. You'd destroy your own family? Dad's voice rose. After everything we've done for you? You destroyed this family the moment you chose greed over truth. The security guard took a step forward, but Uncle Jack's phone flashed. Smile, everyone. We're live streaming now. My followers would love to see what happens next. The suit grabbed Dad's arm, whispering urgently. Mom sank to her knees, sobbing. One chance, I said, pulling a document from Uncle Jack's bag. Sign the confession, transfer everything back to me legally, and this stays private. Refuse, and tomorrow the whole world knows. You're bluffing, Dad snarled, but his hands were shaking. I held up my phone, showing the live stream count climbing. Try me. The suit spoke rapidly into his phone while the security guard shifted uncomfortably. Outside, blue lights began flashing. Time's up, Uncle Jack announced. Seems the DA's office got tired of waiting. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Dad lunged for the briefcase, but David was faster, snatching it away. The security guard reached under his jacket, but froze at the sound of police sirens. Mom screamed something about family loyalty. And through it all, I stood still, watching my childhood dissolve into chaos and flashing lights. The suit was the first to break, pushing past everyone toward the back door. The security guard followed. Dad looked at me one last time, something like fear finally cracking his arrogant mask. You were always too smart for your own good, he spat. No, I replied calmly. I was just smart enough to see through your lies. Police officers flooded the house. Mom was still crying, Dad was being read his rights, and the briefcase full of evidence was being carefully catalogued. Detective Smith, Uncle Jack's contact, took my statement with professional efficiency. We've been building a case against your father's development company for months, she explained. This is exactly what we needed. As dawn broke, I stood on the porch where garbage bags had greeted me just hours before. David appeared beside me, looking exhausted but relieved. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner, he said. I had to be sure we had everything. You were protecting me, I replied. Like you always have. He smiled sadly. Someone had to. They sure weren't going to. Behind us, the house buzzed with police activity. Our parents were being led to separate cars. The suit and his muscle had been caught trying to flee through the neighbor's yard. Uncle Jack emerged from the house, looking grimly satisfied. The DA's office is filing charges immediately. Multiple counts of fraud, forgery, grand theft. What happens now? David asked. I looked at the rising sun, thinking of Grandma's warning about trust and truth. Now, I said, we build something honest from the ashes of their lies. Play it again, Detective Smith ordered, her eyes fixed on my father's face through the one-way glass. The recording crackled to life, Dad's voice, then Mom's, plotting their scheme. But it was the third voice that made my blood freeze. We need to handle Allison carefully, David was saying. She trusts me. I can keep her distracted while you finish the transfers. I turned to leave the observation room, bile rising in my throat. Even David. Even my own brother. Wait. Detective Smith grabbed my arm. There's more. Watch your brother's hands. I forced myself to look. In the grainy video, while our parents focused on their papers, David's fingers moved in a familiar pattern. Sign language, something we'd invented as kids. Trust me. Recording everything. My knees went weak as understanding dawned. For 3 months, my little brother had been playing a dangerous game, pretending to be their accomplice while gathering evidence against them. The next video showed Dad's office. David, apparently eager to help with the scheme, volunteering to handle documents. Each time, his phone concealed in a pocket, recording every conversation. Every confession. Your brother came to me 2 months ago, Detective Smith explained. He discovered their plans by accident, overheard them discussing the forged documents. Instead of confronting them, he decided to gather evidence. But the text messages he sent me, warning me away, had to be convincing. If they'd checked your phone and found him warning you directly, the whole operation would have fallen apart. The final video played. David in Dad's study at 3 a.m., carefully photographing documents, his hands shaking but steady enough to capture every detail of their crimes. It was extremely dangerous, Detective Smith continued. If they'd caught him. A noise in the hallway made us turn. David stood there, looking exhausted but resolute. They almost did, he said quietly. Last week. Dad came home early, almost found me copying the offshore account details. I crossed the room in 3 strides and threw my arms around him. You idiot, I whispered. You could have been hurt. They were hurting you, he replied simply. That was worse. The interrogation room speaker crackled. Dad was demanding to speak with David. Shall we? Detective Smith's smile was predatory. Time to show them exactly who they were conspiring with. David straightened his shoulders. Let me go first. I've got one more recording they haven't heard yet. The change in my father's expression when David entered his interrogation room was subtle but telling. Relief, then calculation. Son, he began, whatever they're telling you. Save it. David's voice was steel. You want to know what really happened that night last week when you almost caught me in your study? He pulled out his phone, pressed play. Dad's face went ashen as his own voice filled the room. Once we have Allison's inheritance, we'll need to make sure she never discovers the truth. I have connections who can make people disappear. Mom's nervous laughter. Tom, you're not suggesting. I'm suggesting we protect our investment. Whatever it takes. The recording continued, revealing their conversations about having me committed to a psychiatric facility if I became suspicious. Plans to drug me if necessary. Discussions of worse alternatives. You see, David's voice was conversational, but his eyes were hard. That's the night I realized this wasn't just about money. You would have actually hurt her. My sister. Your daughter. Dad's facade cracked completely. We never meant. The funny thing is, David continued as if Dad hadn't spoken, you were so busy watching Allie, making sure she didn't suspect anything, you never thought to watch me. The quiet son. The one who never caused trouble. He laid out a stack of photos on the table. Every document you forged. Every account you created. Every meeting with your criminal friends. I documented all of it. Mom was sobbing in the next room, but I barely heard her. I was transfixed by the scene unfolding before me. Detective Smith has an interesting theory, David said, still in that eerily calm voice. She thinks you chose to victimize Allie because she was the strong one. The successful one. The one who made you feel inferior. That's ridiculous, Dad sputtered, but his eyes betrayed him. Is it? You couldn't control her like you controlled me, or thought you did. Couldn't make her dependent on you. So you decided to destroy her instead. The evidence was overwhelming. David had captured everything, not just the financial crimes, but the psychological warfare they'd waged. The subtle manipulations. The calculated cruelty. Mr. Wilson, Detective Smith stepped in, your son has provided us with enough evidence to put you away for 20 years. Minimum. My own son, Dad whispered. My own flesh and blood. No, David stood, his contempt finally visible. You lost the right to call me that when you plotted to harm my sister. We're not your children anymore. We're the ones who brought you down. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and those connections who make people disappear. They're very interested in talking to the police about your other activities. Dad lunged across the table, but the officers were faster. As they restrained him, his mask finally shattered completely. I'll destroy you, he screamed. Both of you. You're nothing without me. Nothing. David didn't flinch. Wrong again, Dad. We're finally something real. Something honest. Something you never were. In the observation room, I watched my father crumble. Mom's hysteria next door had reached a fever pitch as she realized the full extent of David's deception. 9 years, I said to Detective Smith. He spent 9 years pretending to be the troublemaker, the weak one, just so they'd let their guard down around him. She nodded. Your brother's recordings go back to that first incident, the day you caught your father with his secretary. He's been documenting their lies ever since, waiting for the right moment. Uncle Jack appeared with more news. The DA was upgrading the charges based on the evidence of planned violence. Dad's connections were being rounded up. The entire criminal enterprise was unraveling. What happens now? I asked David when he returned. He looked tired but peaceful. Now we rebuild. Together. No more lies, no more pretending. Why didn't you tell me what you were doing? Your reactions had to be genuine. They were watching you too closely. He smiled sadly. Besides, one of us had to be the obvious target. Better me than you. The sound of doors opening drew our attention. Our parents were being led out in handcuffs, heading for separate prison transport vehicles. David. Mom's cry was desperate. Baby, please. We can still be a family. He didn't even turn around. We are a family, Mom. Just not the one you created. We're something better now. Something real. As we walked out of the police station, the morning sun felt like a spotlight of truth, burning away years of shadows and lies. You know what Grandma used to say? David asked suddenly. The truth isn't always pretty, but it's always valuable. Guess she knew what was coming. I took his hand, squeezing it like I used to when we were kids. Thank you for being my silent guardian. He squeezed back. Thanks for being worth protecting. Behind us, the police station doors closed on our past. Ahead lay something new, a future built on truth, protected by a brother's love, and strengthened by the bonds that deception couldn't break. 1 month after the arrests, I sat in the courtroom, watching my parents make their final desperate play. Your Honor, Mom's expensive lawyer argued, my client acted under duress. Her husband's psychological manipulation. Objection. Dad exploded, jumping up. Linda, how dare you? After everything. The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. Mr. Wilson, control yourself or you'll be removed. Their united front had crumbled the moment separate trials seemed likely. Now they were turning on each other with the same vicious intensity they'd once directed at me. Mom's tearful testimony painted herself as a victim of Dad's schemes. Dad's defense tried to blame everything on his mental breakdown after losing his job. Each attempting to salvage something from the wreckage of their crimes. Neither spared a glance for the children they tried to destroy. The prosecution calls David Wilson to the stand. My brother's testimony was devastating in its simplicity. Years of recordings. Photos of documents. Videos of late-night meetings. Their masks cracked further with each piece of evidence. She's supposed to be in a mental hospital. Dad shouted when I took the stand. She's unstable. She's lying. But the evidence spoke for itself. The jury took less than 2 hours to reach their verdict. Guilty. On all counts. Mom collapsed, wailing about family loyalty. Dad lunged at his lawyer, had to be restrained. Their perfect facades shattered completely, revealing the monsters beneath. 25 years, the judge announced. No possibility of parole for 15. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. The story was irresistible, prominent developer and wife convicted of massive fraud, brought down by their own children. This is harassment. Dad shouted as they led him away. I'll appeal. I'll. Save it for your cellmate, David called after him. I hear they love family betrayal stories in prison. 6 months later, I sat in my new office, reviewing the latest applications to the Wilson Foundation for Family Justice, the nonprofit David and I had created using part of our recovered inheritance. The headlines told the story of our parents' fall. Wilson empire crumbles, properties seized. Socialite wife faces prison after failed appeal. From mansion to cell, the Wilson downfall. Their country club friends had vanished. Their social connections evaporated. Mom's tearful prison interview only made things worse, she came across as manipulative and unrepentant. Dad's first prison fight made the news. Apparently, other inmates didn't appreciate his superior attitude. His second fight left him with a permanent limp. Your mother called again, David said from the doorway. From her new prison after the transfer. Says she's found God and wants to reconcile. I didn't look up from my papers. Did God help her find her conscience too? Doubt it. The guards say she's already trying to run schemes inside. Some people never change. But we had. The foundation was thriving, helping other victims of family financial abuse. David's expertise in gathering evidence had proven invaluable. He developed a whole program teaching people how to document abuse and fraud. Miss Wilson. My assistant poked her head in. The interview crew from 60 Minutes is here. The segment they were filming would tell our story, not as victims, but as survivors who'd turned tragedy into triumph. The producer had called it compelling and inspirational. Ready for this? David asked as we walked to the conference room. Ready to show everyone that family isn't about blood, it's about truth and trust. The interview was watching nationally. Among the millions of viewers were 2 people in separate prison cells, watching their children shine in the light of truth they'd tried to extinguish. Mom wrote another letter after that, full of self-pity and manipulation. I added it to the pile of unopened mail from her. Dad's response was more direct. He tried to sue us for defamation. The lawsuit was dismissed in record time, earning him extra privileges restrictions for abusing the legal system. Their appeals failed one by one. Their former friends testified against them. Their hidden assets were discovered and seized. Their name became synonymous with family betrayal. Meanwhile, we flourished. The foundation expanded to 3 cities. David's evidence-gathering program became a national model. I was invited to speak at law schools about family financial abuse. Our grandmother's property, recovered from Dad's development scheme, became a shelter for families escaping financial abuse. The ultimate transformation of their greed into something healing. Sometimes I wonder, David said one evening as we watched the sunset from my penthouse balcony, if they ever really loved us at all. They loved what we represented, I replied. Success they could control. Power they could manipulate. But real love? That they never understood. The city lights below us twinkled like stars. Somewhere out there, behind prison walls, our parents were living the consequences of their choices. Mom's designer clothes replaced by prison orange. Dad's executive suite downsized to a concrete cell. But here we were, stronger for the breaking, successful on our own terms. My phone buzzed, another interview request, this time from a major publishing house. They wanted our story in book form. Should we do it? I asked David. He smiled. Why not? The truth deserves to be told. All of it. The advance copy of our book arrived a year later. I made sure copies were sent to 2 specific prison libraries. Let them read about the children they tried to destroy, now helping others escape the same fate. Mom's response was another tear-stained letter, claiming the book was full of lies. It joined its unopened predecessors. Dad's response was silence. His latest appeal had failed, and reality was finally sinking in. He'd lost everything, his empire, his freedom, and most importantly, his control. I looked around at what we'd built from the ashes of their betrayal. The foundation thriving. Our work making real change. Our lives rich with honest relationships and meaningful purpose. Then I'd say we've won completely. The next morning, I received news that Mom had tried to start an investment scheme in prison. She'd been caught, lost her privileges, and been transferred to a higher security facility. Dad had lost his final appeal and been moved to a federal prison across the country. His cellmate was a former victim of investment fraud. Karma, it seemed, had a sense of irony. But we weren't focused on their downfall anymore. We were too busy building something better. The foundation was opening its 4th office. David was developing a smartphone app for documenting abuse. I was working on legislation to protect family fraud victims. Miss Wilson. My assistant interrupted my thoughts. Your next appointment is here. Another family needing help. I smiled, ready to turn someone else's tragedy into triumph. Ready to prove again that the strongest family bonds aren't made by blood, but by choice and truth. Behind my desk hung our grandmother's last letter, framed as a reminder, trust no one who values money above truth. They will sell their souls and yours too, if you let them. We hadn't let them. We'd chosen truth over lies, justice over greed, real love over toxic bonds. And in the end, we'd won more than just our inheritance. We'd won our freedom, our purpose, and our true selves.